Trigger warning. Story involves intense suspense, feelings of isolation, and supernatural elements that may be unsettling for some listeners. Viewer discretion is advised. So, this happened about a year ago, and I swear, it's the reason I can't sleep alone anymore. You know when someone suggests a cabin in the woods for a weekend getaway and you're like, oh yeah, sounds perfect. Just me, nature, and some peace and quiet? Well, never again. My buddy Matt has this family cabin way up in the mountains. When I say it's isolated, I mean like really isolated. No neighbors, no cell service, just woods for miles. It's the kind of place you'd go if you wanted to escape everything. Or, I don't know, disappear. Anyway, we were planning this weekend trip with a small group of friends. Just me, Matt, and his girlfriend, Sarah. A chill weekend, right? The cabin's old, but Matt always talked about how his family had great memories there. It's been in his family for, 2 generations or something. But here's the thing. No one had stayed there in years. It was pretty run down, but we figured a weekend of hiking, campfires, and booze would be all we needed. We arrived late Friday night. The drive up there was creepy enough. Narrow roads, dense forest on both sides. The kind of road where if your car broke down, you'd probably just stay in it all night, rather than try to walk for help. By the time we reached the cabin, it was pitch black. The place looked even older than I'd imagined. Peeling paint, an old wooden porch that creaked with every step, and windows that seemed to stare back at you. But we shrugged it off. A little spooky was kind of the point, right? We get inside, set up, and tried to make it as cozy as possible. It was colder than expected, so we got a fire going in the old stone fireplace. Things felt fine at first, normal cabin vibes. But then, around midnight, something started to feel off. We were sitting around, having a few drinks, when I started noticing the wind. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wind in the woods. Big deal. But this wasn't just regular wind. It had this low, almost moaning sound, like it was pushing through the trees, bending them in ways that didn't feel natural. It was getting louder, too, like it was surrounding the cabin. Matt joked about it being the ghosts of the mountains, or something dumb, but I wasn't laughing. I kept hearing these faint footsteps. At first I thought it was just the old wood shifting, but no. These were deliberate, slow, like someone was walking just outside the cabin. I mentioned it, but Matt and Sarah brushed it off. Too much beer or whatever. I didn't push it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. After a while, we all decided to crash. The cabin had 2 rooms. Matt and Sarah took the bigger one, and I had the smaller room across the hall. My room felt different. It was colder, and the walls seemed thinner, like the darkness outside was leaking in. The bed was this old, creaky thing with a heavy quilt that smelled like it hadn't been washed in years. I figured I'd just power through the night and deal with the spookiness in the morning. But man, the second I lay down, I knew something wasn't right. I had this overwhelming feeling that I was being watched. You know that sensation where you can just feel eyes on you? My heart started racing for no reason. I was lying there, staring up at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was just nerves. But then I heard it again. The footsteps. They weren't outside this time. They were inside the cabin. At first they were faint, like they were coming from the living room. Slow, deliberate steps, like someone, or something, was walking around, checking the place out. I strained my ears, hoping I was just hearing things. But no. The footsteps got closer, They moved down the hallway toward our rooms. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode out of my chest. I kept telling myself it was Matt or Sarah, maybe getting up for water or going to the bathroom, but no one opened any doors. And then the footsteps stopped right outside my room. I held my breath, my entire body tense. The air in the room felt thick, almost suffocating. The door to my room was closed, but I swear I could hear breathing on the other side. Low, steady breaths, like someone or something was standing just inches from the door, waiting. After what felt like hours, the breathing stopped. There were no more footsteps. Nothing. Just dead silence. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just lay there, wide-eyed, waiting for whatever it was to come back. Morning finally came, and I shot out of bed the second I saw light coming through the window. I asked Matt and Sarah if they had heard anything, but they both acted like I was crazy. They slept like babies, apparently. I was so freaked out I was ready to leave, but Matt insisted we stay. "It was just the wind," he said. "Old houses make noises," he said. Fine, whatever. We had one more night, and I figured I could tough it out. That day, we hiked around the area, and honestly, the woods felt just as creepy as the cabin. Everything was too still, like too quiet. There weren't any birds, no animals, nothing. Just the sound of the wind. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched from the trees. Every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of movement, just out of the corner of my eye. But when I'd turned to look, there was nothing there. When night fell again, the dread started creeping back in. We made a fire, ate, tried to act normal, but the vibe was off. Even Matt seemed uneasy. Sarah wasn't saying much either. I could tell she felt it too, though she wouldn't admit it. We turned in earlier that night, all of us clearly on edge. I went back to my cold little room, trying to psych myself up for another sleepless night. I climbed into bed, pulling the quilt up tight, and tried to block out everything. But the second I closed my eyes, it started again. The footsteps. But this time they weren't slow. They were fast, heavy, like something was running through the hallway. I shot up in bed, my heart hammering. The footsteps pounded toward my door, but before I could even react, the door slammed open with a violent crack. There was no one there, but I couldn't breathe. The air was freezing, and I felt this pressure, like something was standing in the room, watching me, waiting. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. It was suffocating. The door to my room slowly creaked shut, and then silence. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my stuff, rushed out into the hallway, and burst into Matt and Sarah's room. They both jolted awake, freaked out, but when I told them what had happened, their faces went pale. Sarah admitted that she'd been hearing things too, like whispers in the night. Matt still tried to play it off, but I could see the fear in his eyes. We packed up and left, right then and there. Didn't wait for the sun, didn't even clean up the cabin. We just left. To this day, I have no idea what was in that cabin. Maybe it was something about the land, something old that didn't want us there. All I know is, I'm never going back. Don't let this be the last nightmare you experience. Join our community of horror enthusiasts by hitting subscribe and that notification bell. We summon new terrors every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Have you encountered something supernatural? Your real-life nightmare could be our next video. Submit your stories to nightmaremaker20@gmail.com with the subject line, My Nightmare. Selected stories will be featured with full credit. Don't forget to leave a like if this story kept you up at night.